welcome to another edition of our weekly prediction show, aka the Prize Pick Special. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That's Jason Sukumel. It's the holidays. I don't know what Anwar and Alex. Actually, I know what Anwar is doing. He's having lunch with his mom. So hopefully they're having a good time in Austin today. I have no idea what Alex is doing, which leaves myself and Jason to talk a little Texas Holiday Bowl, not Holiday Bowl, Alamo Bowl. Boy, there's a Freudian slip from the past. Before we get into some bowl discussion, make sure that you go over to PrizePicks. If you haven't done the deposit yet, for some reason, you've watched these videos all year long and you still haven't played PrizePicks, do it today. They will 100% match your initial deposit up to $100.
And
that promo code Orange Bloods. Yeah.
Sorry to jump. And they have like 12 days of Christmas. Today's day 2. Every day is a big promotion. Like today, you get a $20 free play. I don't know what tomorrow's play is, but it's 12 days.
Every day all the way up till Christmas, they're going to have a different promotion.
Yep. They're
essentially allowing you to bet $20 for free today.
And you can win off that 20. You could win up to like 200 depending on how many picks you play.
I think I'm just going to try to win 60 tonight, Jason.
Yeah. If you do 2, it pays back 60. If you do 2, like on Thursday Night Football or
a 2-player entry will get you. If you bet $20, it'll pay out 60 if you get on both. And I have a feeling that tonight I'll do some Thursday Night Football action. And
along with fantasy football, it gives you a reason. I love PrizePicks. It gives you a reason to watch a game you really might not otherwise care too much about. So it's awesome, man.
I have cared way more about my PrizePicks and I have a pretty good fantasy team. Like I went 10-4. I'm in the playoffs, and yet there's no doubt about it. I've been way more into my weekly PrizePicks. Saturday, Sunday, during the week, you name it. But before we get to the PrizePicks, Texas, Washington. I mentioned Holiday Bowl. These two teams once upon a time, very, very, very early. It might have actually even predated you, Jason. I think this would have been December of 2001, and you joined real early in 2002, right?
March of 2002, yeah.
Yeah, so the last time these two teams met in a bowl game, literally, and look, Jason and I have been together at Orange Bloods what seems like forever, but once upon a time, these two teams did play in a kind of a classic. Back in the day, it's the Holiday Bowl. There will be some old-timers that will know what we're talking about. There may be some young people who are like, what do you mean the Holiday Bowl once upon a time, like, had a bunch of crazy games? But like 20 years ago, right about the time that Texas and Washington played this game in what would have been Derek Johnson's freshman season, these two teams played in a just crazy game. One of the things I remember about that game, Jason, I remember being in the stands at the game, and Texas is getting its obliterated by Washington. I mean, I remember they kicked a field goal that cut it to 16 in the fourth quarter. They were down by like 20, 30 points in this game back 20 plus years ago. And I remember thinking, okay, this is the first time as the owner of orangebloods.com that I'm going to have to set Mac Brown on fire because people were going nuts in the stands. Like they were ready to run Mac Brown out of town after having blowed the Big 12 championship game against Colorado and then to be obliterated by Washington. What I remember most about that game is thinking, like I made a resolution. Once I get back home or back to the hotel and I get on a computer, I'm going to have to just kill Mac because this is a horrible loss. And then they came back and won the game.
I'm looking at I remember the game. It's 47-43. I think Major Applewhite, 473 yards and 4 touchdowns. It's incredible. Yeah.
And
I remember watching that game, and my parents were watching it with me this up here in Austin. And I remember after the game, they were convinced, like they were worried that I had bet on the game because I was getting so into the game. They were like, "You in that game? You need to tell us about it." I was like, "No, it's just an awesome game to watch. It was exciting, man." So.
Well, I remember one of the things about Mac Brown from that game. I mentioned they kicked the field goal and they cut the lead. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not looking at the box score or anything. I think they cut it to 16 in like the fourth quarter. And I just remember thinking, you get into these games and it's like you got to go, especially now. It's in vogue to go for it on fourth down. And I remember early in that game, maybe they even kicked it to cut it to 13. They did something in the fourth quarter where they kicked a field goal and it cut the lead down by just a little bit.
Yeah,
and I remember thinking, God, that might have been where you should have gone for the touchdown. You're way behind. And then the entire time that Mac Brown was the coach at Texas, it was a lesson that I remember learning in this game that Mac never panicked when it came to game management in the fourth quarter. He always treated it like he wasn't in a rush. And I say that as a total compliment. I always thought Mac Brown did a really good job of game management when he was at Texas. But I just remember there was a moment there where I thought they should have gone for it. And he didn't. He just took the points. And in the end, it worked out for him. And I always had a lot of respect for the way that he kind of coolly managed a game when you see other coaches panic. Anyway.
Your mind is like a vault, man, because you remember so many details I don't remember. They took a 36-20 lead. I just read this somewhere into the fourth quarter. And Texas outscored them 27-7 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, again, if you go back and look, they cut that lead down to 16. Maybe it was in the third quarter, late third quarter, something like that. But there was this sense of God, you're so far behind and you got to go for it. And I'm telling you, for the rest of the time that Mac Brown was at Texas, so we're talking another 13 years.
24-yard field goal with 1:18 left in the third quarter catch. So they were on the 6 or 7 yard line and decided to kick the field goal down by 19 points.
Yes, down by 19, almost going into the fourth quarter. You're right. I don't know how I can't remember where I put my keys.
I'm like, did you actually read this before we started filming?
Swear to God. I also, if I remember correctly, didn't Matt Trissel had a touchdown in that game?
Yes, he did. First touchdown of the fourth quarter. Matt Trissel, 2-yard touchdown.
I can see it in my head because we were at that end of the stadium where Texas was playing towards in the fourth quarter. Oh, I remember a number of those trips to San Diego in the Holiday Bowl, but the Washington one was always my favorite. And I think, Jason, when we look ahead to the Alamo Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks, we could have this kind of a Holiday Bowl game. I say that with a lot of respect for the Texas defense because they have not been. They've been a really good defense this year, and yet Washington will throw the ball. I don't think Texas fans. I doubt most Texas fans have watched Washington play this season. They probably don't have an idea of how good Michael Penix Jr. really is. Before you and I started recording this video, their number 3 receiver almost has as many yards as Xavier Worthy has on the entire season. Just a really prolific Washington offense, but it's a bad Washington defense. And it could mean that the Alamo Bowl is a lot of fun because I think both of these teams are going to score some points. I think the thing I can't quite figure out is what will the needed point value be? Do you need to score 30? Do you need to score 35? Do you need to score 40? Is it 45? This could be one of these games where a lot of points are scored.
On paper, this feels like a game the way we thought the Texas and TCU game was going to go, right? About a month ago, and that game ended up being a defensive struggle. Bowl games, I think bowl games are always tough to predict. You have the long layoff, and more than ever, man, with guys opting out and things, it's just, I don't know what Washington's, we'll dig into that probably in the next week or two, but what their situation is. I don't know. Do they have a lot of key players that are opting out? I don't know the answer to that, honestly. But, Texas is going to have some holes offensively. They're going to obviously at running back, and then probably a couple guys on defense are going to have to fill in for. So it's a tough one to predict because we haven't seen this Texas team that we're going to see in the Alamo Bowl. But, yeah, you're right. On paper, it feels like a game that's going to have a lot of points. And as we get into our prize picks entries, I will be taking the more on probably a lot of them. I think, before we started recording, I told you my bold prediction about Quinn. I think Quinn Ewers is going to have a big game because he's going to have a big game for this to be competitive.
That really is, I think, the elephant in the room with this game. Because the opportunity will be there for Quinn Ewers to have some numbers. Washington will give up numbers in the passing. They're pretty good defending the run. If I'm not mistaken, they're 33rd in the country in defending the run. They're definitely respectable. Who knows? Jonathan Brooks, assuming he gets the start, because the anticipation is that Roschon Johnson and Bijan, even though kind of strange that those announcements haven't been made yet.
Yeah, it is.
I think the running game for Texas will be fine, but I think the way you have to win this game, unless we're completely wrong and it turns into TCU part 2. And then it's like, well, we thought a bunch of points were going to be, but Michael Penix Jr., he's better than Max Duggan. He just is.
I don't see any way Washington doesn't put up points. Texas is a little more, without Bijan and Roschon, probably a little more suspect. I think Texas will put up points. We've seen games where the Texas offense has struggled, but I think it's pretty much a given Washington is going to put up points. The Texas offense better be on its A game.
Penix Jr. reminds me of a better version of Frank Harris. He's better than Frank Harris in every way. For those who don't remember, that's the UTSA quarterback that played pretty well against Texas for the first 30 minutes of that game before Texas separated in the second half earlier this year. Penix Jr. is a better runner, although Frank Harris is a good runner. Having watched Penix Jr. a few times, like when he runs, you're scared of him as a runner. He's not one of these guys that can finish with 50 yards rushing, but you always kind of feel like the max is 15 yards for the guy. Like he's a little bit more of a scarier, but man, he can really sling the ball all over the field. Guys like that typically, as they are for most defenses of college football, they can be problems for this Texas defense. A guy that gives you, because Texas has not been overly aggressive against quarterbacks that can run this season. They typically play more conservative. It's worked out for them, but it means a lot of times they've given up yards. I think you and I anticipate that in this bowl game. So it comes down to if Roschon and Bijan don't play as expected, and you're playing against a defense that throws or gives up a lot of passing yards, can Quinn Ewers be the guy in this bowl game that he wasn't really down the stretch? I kind of think the answer, Jason, for me anyway, is somewhere in the middle. Like I feel like he's going to have numbers. Are they going to end up being?
He's going to have numbers because of the volume.
Yeah, I mean, is it going to be fuzzy math where at the end of it we're like, well, he threw for 300 yards and he had 2 touchdowns, which actually doesn't sound too bad right about now. But it doesn't quite fill the way that the numbers look. We've done that with Quinn a couple of times this year where it's like, the Iowa State game is a perfect example. They win by 3 points. He throws 3 touchdowns. His quarterback rating was okay. But if you watch that game, the offense it felt like it matched what the final score line tended to be. I can't quite figure out if I think this is a game where Quinn Ewers just goes off, because I think the opportunity will be there.
I don't know why I've fallen in this trap a couple times when I've said it and then he's stunk it up. But yeah, I think he's going to go off this game. I think he has to go off. I think the coaches know he has to go off. He's got a month to prepare. So you can talk. We talked all season about his preparation. Is it as good as it needs to be? Did he spend enough time in the film room? He's got a month to prepare for Washington, man. So there's no excuse that he shouldn't be mentally prepared. He's going to have to put up numbers to keep up. I'm looking at Washington. They come in with a 6-game winning streak. Catch. Let me read you their point totals and then Penix's yard totals. In their last 6, 51 points scored, 54, 37, 24, 28, 49. Penix threw in his last 6 games 485 yards, 229, 408, 298, 374, and 516.
I'm telling you, he can throw the ball. Let me put it to you like this. Texas wins the Big 12 this year if Michael Penix Jr. is their quarterback.
Yeah.
He finished, it kind of snuck by a lot of people. He finished 1 spot higher in the Heisman voting than Bijan did, which is kind of strange because Caleb Williams wins the Heisman. And you would think, well, on most Heisman ballots, if you're going to pick a West Coast quarterback, Caleb would have been the guy. And obviously he won the Heisman. I was surprised that Michael Penix finished as high in the Heisman ballot as he did. He finished 8th. So he was 1 spot above Bijan. And
Huge numbers, but not incredibly efficient. I mean, 155.5 passer rating. So
he's a volume guy.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, they're not great. They're pretty good. It's like I think he's better than Max Duggan, but I wouldn't say that offense is better than TCU's because the pieces around Duggan when they're healthy, TCU's really talented. I think Washington's not quite – there's not one skill talent guy that I think they have that I think's better. Their running game's not better than TCU's and from a personnel standpoint. And, you know, I mean, when Quentin Johnson is healthy – they're pretty so this is completely random, but it looks like they're on the verge of maybe adding JoJo Earl and Chris Marshall through the portal.
Tommy Brockermeyer, right?
We're almost getting to the point where TCU skill position guys on an annual basis are really good, really scary.
It's an attractive offense to play in.
Yeah.
You know, makes sense.
They're not quite doing that from a personnel standpoint elsewhere, but and so Washington – I don't think they'll scare you. They scare you with the quarterback. The other guys don't, which is strange because you said they've got 3 receivers who have as much yardage and production.
2,000-yard receivers, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I can't, honestly, having watched 3 or 4 Washington games this year, I don't remember any of their accessory pieces. I just always know that Penix Jr. always seemed to put up high volume. What's the number that you think? Give me a yards and touchdowns number that you think Quinn has to post in this game for Texas to win, quite frankly.
Has to post and what I think he's going to post. Okay, I think he has to post. If you look at Quinn's yardage, like I'm looking at his game-by-game log, 194, 107, 171, 197. Oklahoma State went 319, but that's 4 games in a row where he hasn't even topped 200. I think he has to post probably 280 and 2 touchdowns in this game. And my prize pick entry would probably be, they don't have those totals up, but it would be more than that. I think Quinn's going to go for well over 300 and probably more than 2 touchdowns. I think he's going to have he's going to have his best game of the season in this bowl game. And I've been burned by him. I've said that a couple times. I expect him to have big games. I've been burned by him, but I think this game he's going to have his best game of the season. That's my bold prediction.
And Jason, I'm with you. The funny thing is, I don't feel like this is confirmation bias, right? Like this isn't us just like I think
I've been too hard on. People would say you and I've been too hard on Quinn Ewers in our post.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, so exactly.
I'm with you. Like I'm really anticipating. I also think it's strange that Quinn hasn't had, I would have said before the season started, how many 300-yard games do you think Quinn Ewers would have? And I probably would have said 4 or 5.
Yep.
Same.
I thought like half the games probably would be close to half of the games would probably go.
Mainly because Sarkisian said it in his most recent press conference. Like everybody in college football can throw the ball now. Except Texas this year. And he was like, you got to be able to throw the ball because everybody can throw the ball. And that Texas struggled to just sometimes do the bare basics. And you and I think more than anybody else have been the proponents of throw some short passes, just get the ball to your receivers and get into their – don't ask Quinn to do any of the hard stuff. Just out of his hand, into his receivers, let them do some stuff. I'm curious if that's the offense that we see. Or, and I think this is the first Texas offense in the years that you and I have been doing Orange Bloods. I feel like every year fans are like, throw it deep. You don't throw it deep enough. And this is the first year I've ever seen a Texas. Stop throwing it deep.
People get pissed off when he takes shots down.
And I feel like part of my Orange Bloods analysis over the last 20 years on a game-by-game basis is, hey, you got to take a deep shot like once every quarter, you know. And this isn't the year that that's the case. So I wonder what the game looks like because I feel like if they take some more of the easy stuff, kind of like they did against Kansas, in that final game of the season, I think there are going to be some deep shots available. Whether they hit them, I don't know or not. But I feel like if they just balance the passing offense in a way where you're throwing the ball to Jordan Whittington on some short and intermediate stuff, you're trying to be – if Xavier Worthy gets the ball a half dozen times, but they're all, let's say, within the line of scrimmage or within 10 yards, I feel like that's you'll do well with that. I feel like sometimes with Worthy this season, it's felt like it's either deep or nothing. And I feel like they can be a little bit more conservative against this Washington defense. And by conservative, it may open it up for them to have so much more success in the way of numbers, volume, yards, moving the ball between the 20s. It'll just be interesting to see how Texas approaches that from a passing offense, given what they've been for much of the season.
Well, you and I have been calling for it literally, I think, every week.
Every week.
Throw some quick hitches, quick hitters out to the outside, and just wide receiver screens, whatever you want to do, little pop pass, shovel
pick
pass.
And pops, yeah.
Whatever you do, let Whittington and Xavier Worthy do their thing. And, it seems like the handful of times we saw them run it went for 10 or 12 yards, seems like pretty much every time. So you do that, like you said, then it sets up for some deep shots downfield. And again, like you said, they've got to connect on those deep shots when they're available. Those chances should be there against Washington.
So if we talk about PrizePicks, and it's funny, you and I are about to laugh because we've done this all season long. You talked about Quinn. My guess is they're going to list Quinn between 220 and probably 240 passing yards.
I'm taking the more easily.
Me too.
I'm pounding that more. I'm loading up on it now.
If I tell you that they set Xavier Worthy, my guess is they'll set that between 60 and 70 yards.
I was going to say right at 70, 68, 70. I'm taking the more. I'm loading up on all this stuff.
Yes. I'm pounding the more in the Texas passing game. Let me ask you this. If they set Penix Jr., if they set his passing yardage at 290, do you think he goes above that, or would you stay away from that? Like, it feels like you and I are instinctively going to hammer the Texas more on this. But for those of you that haven't played a lot of PrizePicks, a lot of times you have to pick at least – it can't all be Texas players. You got to have like one other pick. So if you had to pick a Washington more or less entry, and we were just talking about Penix Jr. because he's the guy that stands out above all else, I think all year long his passing game numbers have been between like 290 and 310. So I'm saying 290 because it's a good defense.
Yeah, and man, that's tough because Travis Gailey wrote his – kind of broke down the game a couple weeks ago in his column, and he kind of compared statistically Texas and Oregon State. And I was like, wow, they are pretty close in a lot of the numbers and statistics. He threw for 298 against Oregon State. So you're right around that 290 mark. But then I look at what he's done, like I read off his last six, and I'm like, whoa. So I probably would go more than 290, but that may be one that I stay away from. That's a pretty tough call, like you said, because Texas does field a pretty good defense and a pretty good secondary.
I'm telling you, I think it was the UCLA-Washington game. It was. So if I go back to that game, they had
345 and 4 touchdowns. He threw.
But the more or less for that was 325.5 that night.
Wow.
So I took the less.
Yeah, well, that's a big number. Yeah, but he went over it.
Huge number, and he ends up throwing for 345. And it's why I wonder where they set that number. If they set it at 325, I would definitely take the less.
I would too. I'm looking at the PrizePicks ones that are available now for the bowl season. They got a handful of them, but Frank Harris is at 285.5, CJ Stroud 285.5. Those are the two highest. So that puts in perspective how high that 320 number is.
It's the highest I saw anybody all year long just on passing yards. Usually, because I played Stroud and I played Harris and a few quarterbacks, Max Duggan, pretty consistently all season long. I think the reason why I took the Penix and the less that night, because I just hadn't seen 325 And that was back. I was telling myself that I was taking too many mores, not taking enough
I find
lessons.
myself doing that too. It's like, I don't know. You want to see fun, exciting football games, right?
You want to root against guys.
Yeah.
So I remember that particular night taking. It might have even been a Friday night game, if I remember. Look, I can remember from 2001 the details of the Texas-Washington game, and I can't remember Penix playing UCLA earlier this year. But yeah, no, I'm curious where PrizePicks will set that number, because if it's less than 300, I might think about taking the more. If they put it anywhere near that 325, teams have – I'll give this Texas defense some respect that even if they give up some points in this game, it's hard for me to believe that Washington is just going to go off on that defense. Texas has been so good all year long. Even if Overshown's unavailable and everybody else is, I don't know. All right, here's what we'll do. We're giving you an idea early on what we think about the PrizePicks selections for the bowl game when it comes up next week. Hopefully those entries will be on the board. Although it's hard to say because there's so much uncertainty about what's going to be available. I guess it might come down to when some of these announcements are made with regards to who's playing in the game and who's not. But for now, we've laid down the initial primer. Do what we said, though. Go to PrizePicks today. Don't wait for the Alamo Bowl entries to be in there. Go today and take advantage of the 12 days of Christmas promotion that's still available. I was literally just on it a second ago. It might have been 13 days, and now there's only 12 days left. But I'm looking at it right now. Orange Bloods fans will love this. It's not Malikmas.
Oh, yeah.
It's Pixmas.
Yes.
Go participate in the PrizePicks Pickmas today. $20 protected play. What that means is you can make a $20 bet like we were saying earlier, and even if you lose, they will give you your $20 back.
If you win,
I love it when they do that.
Yeah, me too, dude.
For myself and Jason Sukumel, thanks for watching. Give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Do all those things that we ask you to every time we do a video. But until next week, we'll see you later. Take care.